Tortured screams echoed through the alien prison complex as humanity's bravest warriors faced inhuman cruelty at the hands of the Galactic Council. In a dimly lit chamber reeking of blood and fear, Sergeant Eugene Coleman of the Earth Defense Forces steeled himself for another round of brutal interrogation by the ruthless Jem'Hadar Inquisitor Raxor. Coleman and his squad had been captured during a covert recon mission on Gamma Trianguli VI, sent by Earth's leaders to investigate troubling rumors about their supposed allies in the Council. Over days that blurred into weeks, Coleman watched his battle-hardened comrades break one by one, their minds shattered, their bodies broken, all to sate the Jem'Hadar's sadistic thirst for suffering. But the sergeant endured, clinging to a hidden purpose even as Raxor inflicted ever greater torments in pursuit of Earth's military secrets. Because Coleman and his soldiers had a critical secondary objective, to record the Council's atrocities and treachery, compiling evidence to present before all humanity and unmask their false friends' true nature. Through furtive whispers and coded taps, the captive squad built a damning record of the horrors inflicted upon them. And as Raxor loomed above Coleman, ready to end his life, salvation erupted from the smoke and blood. Earth's elite Phoenix Corps smashed into the compound, laying waste to the Jem'Hadar guards. Staggering to a terminal, Coleman transmitted their evidence to Earth's command, along with a dire warning: the Council was coming to annihilate humanity. The people of Earth must prepare for the war to come. Dragged to an evac shuttle, Coleman looked out on the burning ruins of the alien base, where his comrades' broken bodies now lay abandoned. The battle to save humanity had only just begun, and Earth would stand alone against the oncoming storm of the Galactic Council's wrath. But now the truth was known, and the human spirit would never yield, no matter what nightmares the galaxy unleashed. The evac shuttle tore through the void, fleeing the smoldering ruins of the Jem'Hadar base with its precious cargo of broken humanity. In the craft's dimly lit hold, medics worked frantically to stabilize the few surviving members of Coleman's squad, their blood-soaked uniforms testament to the price they had paid for Earth's salvation. Coleman himself lay strapped to a gurney, his battered body racked by waves of agony as the drugs and adrenaline that had sustained him through captivity began to fade. But even as darkness crept in at the edges of his vision, the sergeant's mind remained fixed on the horrors he had witnessed, the evidence of the Council's true face that now raced ahead of them to the heart of human space. Days later, Coleman awoke to the sterile white confines of an isolation ward, deep within a secure military facility on Earth. He and his comrades had been whisked away upon arrival, their existence a closely guarded secret, even as Earth's leadership grappled with the shattering implications of the data they had brought back from Hell. From his bed, Coleman watched as grim-faced doctors and psychiatrists tended to his squad's grievous wounds, the haunted looks in their eyes telling him that the road to recovery would be lengthy and challenging. But even as his body struggled to heal, the sergeant's spirit remained unbroken, tempered by the crucible of the Jem'Hadar's brutality and the knowledge that humanity now faced an existential threat unlike any it had known before. As the days turned to weeks, Coleman chafed at his forced inactivity, his mind racing with the need to take action against the looming menace of the Council. It was during one of these restless moments that the door to the ward opened, admitting a battle-scarred figure in the uniform of an Earth Defense Forces general. "Sergeant Coleman," the man said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "I'm General Thaddeus Briggs. I'll get right to the point. We need you." Coleman struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the lances of pain that shot through his body at the movement. "Sir, my squad and I are ready to get back in the fight. Just give us the word." Briggs held up a hand, his expression grim. "Son, what you and your boys went through, it's not something most men could come back from. Command's decided to keep you under wraps for now, at least until we can figure out our next move." Coleman's eyebrows furrowed, a flash of anger sparking in his eyes. "With respect, sir, we can't afford to sit on our asses while the Council prepares to wipe us out. We need to be out there, warning our people, getting ready for what's coming." The general sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "It's not that simple, Coleman. The Council's already spinning their version of events, making you out to be a bunch of delusional head cases. We go public with this too soon, they'll bury us in doubt and confusion. No, we need to be smart about this. He fixed Coleman with a penetrating stare. That's where you come in, Sergeant. Or should I say, Captain Coleman. I'm putting together a special task force off the books to start figuring out how we're going to fight these bastards. And I want you on it. Coleman blinked, surprise warring with steadfast perseverance on his battered features. I don't know what to say, sir. I'm no officer, no strategist. I'm just a grunt who got lucky enough to survive. Briggs shook his head. You're more than that, son. You've seen the enemy up close in ways no one else has. You know how they think, how they operate. That's intel we're going to need if we're going to have a chance in hell of beating them. The general leaned forward, his eyes boring into Coleman's. I won't lie to you, Captain. The odds are stacked against us. The Council's got tech and numbers we can't even begin to match. And there are plenty of people right here on Earth who'd rather bury their heads in the sand than face up to the truth of what's coming. He straightened, teeth clenched with willpower. But we're not going down without a fight. Humanity's faced long odds before, and we've always come out swinging. With men like you leading the charge, I know we can do it again. Coleman felt a surge of emotion rising in his throat, a mix of pride and humility and ironclad grit. He thought of his squad, the brave men and women who had endured the unendurable beside him, and of the billions more who now looked to soldiers like him to keep them safe from the oncoming storm. General Briggs, he said, his voice rough but unwavering, I'll do whatever it takes, give whatever I have to give. For my squad, for Earth, for the whole damn human race. If the Council wants a war, then by God, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The general nodded, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That's what I wanted to hear, Captain. Now let's get to work. We've got a planet to save. Captain Eugene Coleman stepped out of the military hospital into the harsh glare of camera flashes. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions about his ordeal and Earth's response to the Galactic Council's betrayal. Coleman's lips pursed as he pushed through the crowd, ignoring the pain that still lanced through his body with each step. Captain, what message do you have for the people of Earth? A journalist called out. Coleman paused, turning to face the sea of expectant faces. His eyes, haunted by memories of Raxor's torture chamber, blazed with newfound purpose. The truth, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed crowd. The truth about what's really happening out there and who's responsible for it. In the weeks that followed, Coleman's face became a fixture on news broadcasts and social media feeds. He stood before packed auditoriums, his uniform crisp despite the dark circles under his eyes, recounting in vivid detail the horrors he and his squad had endured. They called themselves our allies, Coleman told a rapt audience in New Delhi. But while they shook our hands with one set of tentacles, they were readying the knife with another. I've seen what the Council does to those they consider lesser beings. And make no mistake, that's exactly how they see us. As Coleman's message spread, so did the controversy. Corporate-owned media outlets began running hit pieces, painting him as an unstable veteran pushing conspiracy theories. Politicians loyal to the Council decried his dangerous rhetoric and called for him to be silenced. But for every voice raised against him, a dozen more rallied to his cause. In London, Paris, and Lagos, crowds gathered to hear Coleman speak, chanting his name and demanding action against the Council and its earthbound collaborators. We've got Benedict Arnolds walking among us, Coleman declared during a live-streamed address. CEOs and senators who've sold us out for a seat at the alien table. Well, I've got news for them. There are no seats at that table, just dinner plates. He began naming names, exposing backroom deals and secret Council investments. Each revelation sent shockwaves through the corridors of power, toppling careers and shattering reputations. As the pressure mounted, Earth's authorities struck back. Coleman narrowly escaped an accidental gas leak in his apartment. 2 of his fellow soldiers died in a suspicious car crash. The message was clear: keep quiet or else. But Coleman refused to be silenced. He went underground, coordinating with a network of hackers, dissidents, and disillusioned military personnel. They called themselves the Shadow Front, and their first major action shook the foundations of Earth's power structure. Millions of classified documents flooded the internet, laying bare the full extent of the Council's machinations. Videos of secret meetings, financial records of bribes and kickbacks, plans for re-education centers to be built on Earth. The truth could no longer be denied. Cities erupted in protest. Angry mobs stormed corporate headquarters and government buildings. In Washington, D.C., the White House lawn became a sea of placards demanding Earth for Earthlings and no more alien lies. Coleman watched the chaos unfold from a hidden bunker, surrounded by banks of computer screens and former Spec Ops soldiers. He felt a mix of pride and trepidation as he saw his words, his suffering, ignite a global movement. "We've opened their eyes," he told his comrades. "Now comes the hard part." As government crackdowns intensified, Coleman's resistance cells sprang into action. They moved in the shadows, striking Council-aligned targets with surgical precision. A weapons research facility in the Urals went up in flames. A prison camp for dissidents in the Australian outback saw its security systems fail, allowing hundreds to escape. With each successful operation, Coleman's legend grew. Graffiti of his face appeared on the city walls worldwide. Children played humans versus aliens in the streets, each wanting to be the heroic Captain Coleman. But even as hope began to flourish, Coleman knew the real battle loomed on the horizon. He stood in the Resistance's makeshift war room, studying holographic projections of Council fleet movements. "They're coming," he said grimly to his assembled lieutenants. "And when they do, it'll make what I went through look like a day at the beach." One of the younger soldiers, barely out of his teens, looked up at Coleman with a mix of fear and purpose. "What do we do, sir?" Coleman's hand unconsciously traced the scars on his face, a reminder of what was at stake. "We do what humanity's always done when backed into a corner. We fight, and this time, we fight for keeps." Coleman's prediction proved prophetic. Within days, Earth's governing bodies made their move. President David Christiansen's face filled screens worldwide, his face tight with certainty. "People of Earth, for too long, we have been pawns in the Galactic Council's game. No more. As of this moment, Earth formally withdraws from all agreements with these so-called allies." The chamber erupted in thunderous applause. Christiansen raised his hands, silencing the room. "We will not bow to tyranny. We will not be subjugated. Earth stands free and independent." In the Shadowfront's hidden command center, Coleman watched the broadcast, a mix of pride and trepidation churning in his gut. "Well, there's no going back now," he muttered. His second-in-command, Sarah Chen, nodded grimly. "The Council won't take this lying down." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Chen's fingers flew across holographic displays. Multiple Council ships just dropped out of FTL. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The harsh visage of a Ruxan admiral filled the main screen. "Rebels of Earth," the alien rasped, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Your defiance ends now. Surrender the terrorist Coleman and disband your insurgency, or face annihilation." Coleman's eyes narrowed. "Like hell we will." President Christensen's response came swiftly, broadcast to both Earth and the Council fleet. "We do not negotiate with oppressors. Earth stands united behind Captain Coleman and his brave fighters." The next weeks passed in a blur of frenetic activity. Coleman's guerrilla tactics, honed through bitter experience, spread like wildfire. In cities across the globe, ordinary civilians transformed into resistance fighters. At a hastily converted training ground outside Beijing, Coleman watched a group of recruits, doctors, teachers, office workers just days ago, learning to wield scavenged alien weaponry. Their instructor, a grizzled veteran of Coleman's original squad, barked orders. "Remember, their armor's weakest at the joints. Aim for the gaps and keep moving." A young woman, her lab coat exchanged for combat fatigues, fired her plasma rifle. The target disintegrated in a shower of sparks. She turned, grinning fiercely at Coleman. "How's that, Captain?" Coleman nodded approvingly. "Not bad, but out there the targets shoot back." As Earth prepared, Coleman's forces struck. Stealth shuttles, their hulls coated in energy-absorbing nanomaterials, slipped past Council patrols. Coleman led a daring raid on Ganymede, freeing hundreds of human prisoners from a secret Council facility. But it was the mission to Ceres that changed everything. Lieutenant Marcus Graves, a promising young officer, volunteered to lead the strike team. Coleman hesitated, seeing echoes of his younger self in the eager lieutenant. "This isn't a game, Graves. One mistake, and you're all dead." Graves met his gaze unflinchingly. "With respect, sir, I know the risks, but that data could save millions of lives." Coleman relented. "All right, but you come back alive, understand?" The mission was a knife's edge of tension. Coleman paced the command center, watching Graves's team infiltrate the Council's asteroid base. Alarms blared, pulse rifle fire lighting up the feeds. "We're pinned down," Graves's voice crackled over the comms. "There's too many." The feed cut out, Coleman's fists clenched, nucleus tightening. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, miraculously, Graves's shuttle burst from the asteroid's hangar, trailing fire and debris. "Package secured," Graves reported, his voice tight with pain. "But we've got company." Coleman sprang into action. "All units, this is Shadowfront Actual. Converge on Graves's position and get him home." The intelligence Graves' team secured was invaluable. Earth now knew the full scope of the Council's invasion plans, but there was no time to celebrate. Warning klaxons echoed across the planet. The Council's armada had arrived. General Xyrax's flagship dwarfed the other vessels, a city-sized monstrosity overflowing with weaponry. Coleman stood on the bridge of the Jovian Thunder, a captured and retrofitted Council carrier. Around him, crews worked with frantic efficiency, readying Earth's patchwork fleet for battle. "Nova Corps, you are clear for launch," Coleman ordered. "Hit them hard and fast. Show these bastards what humanity can do." Swarms of fighters erupted from concealed hangars across the solar system. At their head flew Angela Reeves, ace pilot and Nova Corps commander. Her voice rang out across the comms, cool and determined. "All wings, form up on me. Remember your training, watch each other's backs, and let's send these Xeno bastards packing." The battle was chaos incarnate. Council dreadnoughts unleashed salvos that vaporized asteroids, but the Nova Corps pilots were ready, their reflexes heightened by neural interfaces, their ships enhanced with reverse-engineered Council tech. Coleman's voice cut through the din. "Reeves, we've located Xyrax's command ship. Can your squad punch a hole for us?" "With pleasure, sir," Reeves replied. "Nova Squad, on me. Let's clear a path for the Jovian Thunder." What followed was a masterclass in piloting. Reeves's squadron danced through a maelstrom of energy beams and plasma torpedoes. One by one, Xyrax's escort ships erupted in flames. "Path cleared, Captain," Reeves called out. "Give 'em hell!" The Jovian Thunder surged forward, its experimental shield technology barely holding against the onslaught. Coleman gripped the command rail, teeth clenched. "All hands, prepare for boarding action." Grappling beams lashed out, securing the Thunder to Xyrax's flagship. Boarding pods punctured the hull like angry wasps. Coleman led the charge, his rebuilt body enhanced with cutting-edge cybernetics. "Push forward," he roared, pulse rifle spitting death. "We end this today." The corridors of Xyrax's ship ran red with alien ichor. But the cost was high. Good men and women fell with every meter gained. Coleman's heart ached for the lives lost, even as his tactical mind pushed on. Finally, they reached the bridge. Coleman kicked down the door, weapon raised. General Xyrax, a hulking Ruxan covered in battle scars, turned to face him. "So," the alien growled, "the slave comes to challenge its master." Coleman's eyes blazed with cold fury. "I'm nobody's slave, and you're under arrest." Xyrax laughed, a harsh grating sound. "You think this changes anything, human? You've merely delayed the inevitable," Xyrax snarled, mandibles clicking in defiance even as Coleman secured him in restraints. Before Coleman could respond, the ship rocked violently. Alarms blared as a voice crackled over the intercom. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Massive Council fleet inbound." Coleman's eyes widened. He tapped his comm link. "Reeves, status report." "It's bad, sir." Angela's voice came through. strained and breathless. We're talking hundreds of ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, the works. They're led by some monster of a vessel, never seen anything like it. Coleman's mind raced. They'd won the battle, but the war was far from finished. All forces, fall back to defensive positions. We need to regroup. As the human fleet retreated, Coleman studied the tactical displays. The sheer number of enemy vessels was staggering. At their center loomed a behemoth that dwarfed even Zyrax's flagship. "I know that ship," Zyrax rumbled, mandibles twitching in what might have been a smile. "That's the Voidhammer, Supreme Admiral Gortak's personal command vessel." Coleman's blood ran cold. He'd heard whispers of Gortak, a tactical genius renowned for his ruthlessness. If he was here... The next weeks were a blur of frantic preparation and guerrilla strikes. Coleman consolidated resistance cells under his command, streamlining their operations. But for every victory, there seemed to be two setbacks. Reports flooded in of terrorist attacks on civilian targets, brutal, messy affairs that didn't fit the Resistance's usual MO. Coleman pored over intelligence reports with Lieutenant Marcus Graves, piecing together a disturbing picture. "False flag operations," Graves concluded, his face grim. "They're trying to turn public opinion against us." Coleman nodded. "And it's working. We're losing support in key sectors." As if on cue, screens throughout the command center flickered to life. A stern-faced Ruxin appeared, Supreme Admiral Gortak himself. "People of Earth," the alien intoned, his voice oddly melodious for such a fearsome creature. "I come with an offer of peace. Lay down your arms, turn over the terrorist Coleman, and we can end this senseless violence." The message cut out, replaced seconds later by a different transmission. This time, Gortak's visage was twisted with rage. "Subhumans, your defiance seals your fate. Prepare for annihilation." Coleman's fists clenched. Clever bastard. He's keeping us off balance, never knowing which face is real. A young private caught Coleman's attention. Jake Gunnarsson, barely old enough to enlist, but with a sharp mind for strategy. "Sir, what if we use their own tactics against them?" Coleman raised an eyebrow. "Go on, Private." Gunnarsson outlined a daring plan to infiltrate Council communication networks, feeding false information to sow confusion in their ranks. Coleman nodded approvingly, promoting the young soldier to his personal staff. But there was no time to celebrate. Alarms blared throughout the command center. Gortak's invasion force had made its move. "Multiple attack vectors," Graves shouted. "They're hitting Mars, Europa." "Wait, no, it's a feint. The main force is headed straight for Earth." Coleman's mind raced. They'd prepared for this, but the sheer scale of the assault was overwhelming. He made a snap decision. "Graves, you're in command of our defensive forces. Buy us as much time as you can. I'm taking a strike team to hit Gortak's flagship directly." As Graves coordinated Earth's defenders, Coleman led a hand-picked squad in a stealth assault on the Voidhammer. They fought their way through twisting corridors, planting virus-laden data spikes in key systems. In the heart of the massive ship, Coleman and Gunnarsson worked feverishly to upload the killing stroke, a worm that would cripple the entire fleet's command and control. A plasma bolt sizzled past Coleman's ear. He spun, returning fire, but not before seeing Gunnarsson catch a blast full in the chest. "Jake!" Coleman rushed to the fallen soldier's side. Gunnarsson's eyes were glassy, but he managed a weak smile. "Did we do it, sir?" he rasped. "Did we win?" Coleman nodded, throat tight. "We did, son, we did." Gunnarsson's eyes closed for the final time as the ship lurched violently. Coleman's team fought their way to the escape pods, launching just as the massive Voidhammer began its death spiral towards Earth's surface. From the bridge of his commandeered shuttle, Coleman watched Gortak's invasion force crumble without its central command. But the victory felt hollow as he took in the devastation wrought on both sides. He opened a channel to the assembled human fleet. "This is Captain Coleman. We've dealt the Council a serious blow today, but make no mistake, this war is not nearly finished. They'll be back, and in even greater numbers. We need to be ready." As the battered remnants of Earth's defenders limped home, Coleman's mind was already racing ahead to the challenges that lay before them. The Council would not take this defeat lightly. The next time they came, it would be with everything they had. Humanity had won a reprieve, but at a terrible cost. Now the real work of preparing for the coming storm would begin. Coleman stood at the viewport of the Jovian thunder, his face etched with weariness as he watched Earth's defense platforms engage yet another Council incursion. The attacks had become relentless, probing Earth's defenses from every angle. "Captain, urgent transmission from Lunabase," Lieutenant Graves called out. Coleman strode to the communications array, steeling himself for more bad news. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of General Yuki Tanaka. "Coleman, we've got a situation," Tanaka said, her voice tight. "Riots have broken out in New Berlin. They're demanding we sue for peace." Coleman's eyebrows furrowed. "That doesn't make sense. We just dealt the Council a major blow. Why would—" His words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. "Multiple hull breaches!" a crewman shouted. "We're being boarded!" Plasma fire erupted on the bridge. Coleman dove for cover, returning fire as Council shock troops poured through the ruptured bulkhead. In the chaos, he caught a glimpse of one of his own officers opening fire on their compatriots. "Traitor!" Coleman roared, his pulse rifle finding its mark. The turncoat crumpled, but the damage was done. As Coleman rallied his loyal crew to repel the assault, his mind raced. The coordinated attack, the riots, the betrayal. This was no coincidence. Hours later, with the Jovian thunder secured and limping towards a hidden repair dock, Coleman convened an emergency war council. The faces on the screens before him were grim, each bearing news of similar incidents across Earth and her colonies. "It's not just military targets," Angela Reeves reported, her usual cool demeanor shaken. "We're seeing civil unrest, terrorist attacks, even attempted coups in some sectors. Someone's trying to tear us apart from the inside." Coleman nodded, his expression grave. "And they're doing a damn good job of it. We need to—" The main view screen flickered, cutting off mid-transmission. In its place appeared a face Coleman had hoped never to see again. Supreme Admiral Gortok. "Greetings, vermin." The Roxan's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile. "I trust you're enjoying our little party?" Coleman's fists clenched. "What do you want, Gortok?" "Want? Why, to crush you beneath the might of the Council, of course." Gortok's compound eyes gleamed. "But I'm not unreasonable. Surrender now, and perhaps we'll allow a few of you to live as our pets." The transmission cut out, replaced moments later by a different alien visage. One Coleman didn't recognize. Its features were ethereal, almost beautiful in their alien symmetry. "I am Archon Talonvar." The being's voice resonated with an unsettling harmony. "Unlike my esteemed colleague, I see potential in your species. Join us willingly, and you may yet find a place within the Galactic Order." As quickly as it appeared, Talonvar's image vanished. Coleman turned to his assembled advisors, their faces a mix of confusion and dread. "Two messages, two very different tones," he mused. "They're trying to keep us off balance, divided in our response." Lieutenant Graves nodded grimly. "And it's working. Reports are coming in of entire regions pushing for capitulation." Coleman's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of intelligence, the precision of the attacks, the spread of misinformation, the impossibly quick erosion of morale. It all pointed to a level of infiltration beyond anything they'd anticipated. "We're not just fighting ships and soldiers anymore," he said, his voice low. "We're up against something far more insidious. Prepare for immediate departure. We need to get to Earth and shore up our defenses before—" Alarms blared once more. On the tactical display, a massive Council armada winked into existence at the edge of the solar system. At its heart was a vessel that dwarfed even Gortok's flagship, a planet killer in all but name. As his crew scrambled to battle stations, Coleman allowed himself a moment of grim reflection. They'd thought the Voidhammer's destruction would buy them time. Instead, it had only spurred the Council to even greater heights of destructive power. The real test of humanity's commitment was only just beginning. Coleman's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The massive Council armada loomed at the edge of the solar system, a stark reminder of the overwhelming odds they faced. He turned to his assembled staff, their faces etched with exhaustion and dogged tenacity. "We're out of time," Coleman said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Prepare for immediate departure. We need to get to Earth now." As the Jovian Thunder limped towards its homeworld, Coleman called an emergency summit of the Unified Coalition leadership. The ship's war room buzzed with activity as holographic projections flickered to life, revealing the faces of humanity's most influential figures. "Ladies and gentlemen," Coleman began, his tone grave, "we face a threat far more insidious than we initially believed." He gestured to a nearby console, and a flood of data cascaded across the screens. "Our intelligence operatives have uncovered evidence of a Vrysoth subterfuge operation. They're not just attacking us from without, they're tearing us apart from within." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled leaders. Coleman pressed on, presenting damning evidence of the subversive agent Kaliara's manipulative efforts. As he spoke, a newcomer to the coalition caught his eye. General Derek Hall, a former corporate magnate whose unwavering focus betrayed no emotion. "I've seen it firsthand," Hall interjected, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. "The Vrysoth's duplicity knows no bounds. I watched them turn my own employees against each other, sowing chaos for their own gain." He paused, jaw clenching. "It's what drove me to join your cause." Coleman nodded, grateful for the unexpected support. "We need to act decisively," he continued. "I propose a series of countermeasures to root out these infiltrators and shore up our defenses." The debate that followed was heated, but Coleman's impassioned arguments and Hall's insider perspective swayed even the staunchest skeptics. Within hours, a set of harsh protocols were ratified. As the Jovian Thunder entered Earth's orbit, Coleman watched grimly as the first wave of mass arrests began. Suspected collaborators were rounded up en masse, while Psi-Corps telepaths combed through the ranks of leadership and military hierarchy. "Sir," Latoya Graves approached, her face ashen, "we've uncovered several high-ranking officials compromised by Vrysoth influence. What are your orders?" Coleman's expression hardened. "Assemble a tribunal. We'll make examples of them." The public executions that followed sent shockwaves through the populace. Coleman stood stone-faced as the traitors faced the firing squad, their deaths broadcast across all channels. It was a brutal necessity, he told himself, even as the weight of the decision settled heavily on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Admiral Graves threw herself into the Steel Paladin Initiative. Coleman observed the first deployment of these elite troops with a mix of pride and trepidation. The sight of human soldiers encased in Zillion hybrid armor was both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a stark reminder of how far they'd come and how much they'd changed. The Steel Paladins cut through Vrysoth saboteur cells like a scythe through wheat. Coleman pored over after-action reports, marveling at their efficiency even as he grappled with the collateral damage left in their wake. But for every victory on the ground, a new battlefront opened in the infosphere. Millions of insidious whisper drones flooded Earth's data networks, unleashing a torrent of misinformation and doubt. The avatar of Kaliara seemed to be everywhere at once, her seductive voice weaving elaborate conspiracies designed to fracture the coalition's willpower. Standing in the heart of New Chicago's central arcology, Coleman steeled himself for what came next. The public trial of captured Vrysoth infiltrators had drawn a massive crowd, their faces a mix of anger and fear. As the verdict was read and the prisoners led to the waiting firing squad, Coleman locked eyes with the nearest camera drone. "Let this serve as a message," he declared, his voice carrying across every civic data feed. "We will root out every last Vrysoth agent, every collaborator, every threat to our survival. Our drive is unshakable, our vigilance absolute." The staccato crack of gunfire punctuated his words. Coleman didn't flinch, even as he felt something shift inside him. The idealistic freedom fighter was gone, replaced by a hardened commander willing to do whatever it took to ensure humanity's survival. As he strode from the execution grounds, Coleman's mind raced with plans for the next phase of the war. The Vrysoth had changed the rules of engagement, and humanity would have to adapt or perish. He tapped his comlink, connecting to the Jovian Thunder's bridge. Prep the ship for immediate departure, he ordered. We're taking the fight to them. We're taking the fight to them, Coleman growled, striding onto the Jovian Thunder's bridge. Set course for Earth. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for a counteroffensive. As the ship hurtled towards humanity's homeworld, Coleman immersed himself in tactical data. The victories against Vrysoth infiltrators had bought them precious time, but he knew it wouldn't last. Earth needed to be ready. Within days of their arrival, construction crews swarmed across the planet's surface. Coleman watched from a temporary command post as massive excavators tore into the ground, carving out the foundations for a network of fortified bunkers. How long until the first redoubt is operational? He asked, turning to the project lead. The engineer consulted her datapad. We're looking at 72 hours for basic functionality, sir. Full integration of command and control systems will take another week. Coleman nodded, his eyes fixed on the bustling activity. Make it 48 hours. We don't have the luxury of time. As Earth's defenses took shape, Coleman's mind raced with plans for the next phase. He summoned General Derek Hall to a secure briefing room deep within the new Chicago arcology. What do you have for me, General? Coleman asked as Hall entered. The former corporate magnate's face was grim. I've identified key resource extraction worlds fueling the Council's war machine. Here. He activated a holographic display, highlighting several star systems. Coleman studied the map, a plan forming in his mind. Excellent work. Now let's talk about our new Venator units. Over the next hours, Coleman laid out his audacious strategy. Stealth ships would insert elite squads of New Earth Venators onto Council worlds, striking at the heart of their supply lines. Weeks later, Coleman stood in the Jovian Thunder's war room, surrounded by a sea of tactical displays. Reports flooded in from across Council space. Refineries sabotaged, supply depots razed, production centers crippled. Sir, Lieutenant Graves called out, her voice tense, we're receiving multiple distress calls from our outer colonies. Gortok's forces are launching indiscriminate orbital bombardments. Coleman's eyes sharp as he watched footage of devastated human settlements. The price of their success was steep, paid in innocent blood. He pushed down the surge of guilt, focusing on the tactical advantage they'd gained. Admiral Graves, he said, turning to his second-in-command, I have a special assignment for you. Take a diplomatic team to the fringes of Zillion space. There's a rogue hive cluster of AI war machines I want you to make contact with. As Graves departed on her mission, Coleman received word of an unexpected development. A fringe xeno-survivor cult had pledged allegiance to their cause after an intercepted whisper drone was traced to their compound. Coleman arrived at the cult's headquarters, accompanied by Lieutenant Jake Gunnarsson. The cult leader presented him with the captured drone, Kaliara's avatar flickering within its crystalline prison. With deliberate ceremony, Coleman raised a plasma torch. For Earth, he intoned, bringing the device down on the drone. In a flash of searing light, Kaliara's image shattered and dissolved. As cheers erupted around him, Coleman caught sight of Gunnarsson's face. The younger man's expression was a mix of awe and unease, a reflection of Coleman's own conflicted feelings. Back in the heart of New Chicago, Coleman found himself embroiled in a heated debate with coalition leadership. Hardline militarists rallied behind his aggressive strategies, while moderates called for restraint and negotiation. We cannot compromise our values in the name of victory, Coalition Chairman David Christensen argued, his voice filled with passionate conviction. Coleman's eyes narrowed. He'd come too far to let well-meaning idealists derail humanity's best chance for survival. With a subtle nod to his security detail, he set in motion a plan that had been weeks in the making. Hours later, news broke of Christensen's arrest on charges of treason. Evidence provided by embedded Venators left little room for doubt. As the moderate faction crumbled, Coleman consolidated his authority. That night, alone in his quarters, Coleman stared at his reflection in the viewport. The face that looked back at him was harder, older, shaped by the weight of impossible decisions. He thought of the principles he'd once held dear, of the lines he'd crossed in the name of survival. A priority alert pulled him from his brooding. Admiral Graves had returned, and with her came a platoon of Zillion war machines. their plasma decimators already being integrated into Earth's defense grid. Coleman squared his shoulders and headed for the bridge. The die was cast. There would be time for reflection later, if they survived. Survived this cataclysm. Coleman's comm unit chirped, "Sir, urgent transmission from New Boston Colony." Dread pooled in his stomach as he activated the holodisplay. The image flickered to life, revealing a hellscape of ash-choked skies and crumbling cityscapes. Where once stood gleaming towers and bustling streets, now only desolation remained. "Archferic devastators," Admiral Graves whispered, her face ashen. "They've weaponized planetary magnetic fields." Coleman's fist clenched as the grim statistics scrolled across the screen. 50 million colonists gone in an instant. "Gortak's response to our guerrilla campaign," he growled. "He's escalating beyond all reason." The war room erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from other colony worlds. The Council's armadas moved with ruthless efficiency, deploying their doomsday weapons against humanity's outlying settlements. Coleman turned to face the assembled coalition leadership, their faces a mix of shock and fury. "We have no choice," he declared. "Initiate the Corvin Protocol." Gasps and protests filled the air. General Hall's eyes widened. "The Ripstalkers? Sir, we can't possibly—" "We can, and we must," Coleman cut him off. "Ready the antimatter warheads." Hours later, Coleman stood on the Jovian Thunder's observation deck, watching as the sleek, otherworldly forms of the Corvin hunter-killers streaked away towards Gortak's fleet. Their black-purple hulls seemed to drink in the starlight, a grim harbinger of the devastation to come. The battle that followed was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. Antimatter explosions bloomed like deadly flowers among the Council's ships, while Ripstalkers tore through hull plating with inhuman efficiency. But Gortak's forces gave as good as they got, unleashing torrent of energy that vaporized entire squadrons. As the casualty reports poured in, Coleman felt something harden within him. There would be no quarter given, no mercy shown. This war had become a crucible that would either forge humanity into an unstoppable force or reduce them to cosmic ash. Amidst the carnage, Admiral Graves approached, her eyes fever-bright. "Sir, we've intercepted transmissions. There's a hidden enemy outpost in the Forix Nebula." Coleman nodded grimly. "Prepare a strike team. We're going in." The assault on the Forix facility was swift and merciless. Coleman watched from the command ship as Graves led her force through the twisting corridors of the alien structure. What they found inside chilled him to the bone. "It's a bioweapons lab," Graves reported, her voice tight with disgust. "Run by the Rin. They call it the Nexus Project." Coleman's blood ran cold as he reviewed the data. A terror serum designed to weaken humanity both physically and psychologically. The final piece of Archon Talonvar's insidious plan. As he processed this new horror, Coleman noticed a change in Graves. Her movements were erratic, her eyes wild. The neural cyber assimilation was taking its toll, bringing out a frightening xenophobic rage. With a heavy heart, Coleman made a decision. He needed answers, and there was only one place to get them. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered. "I'm meeting with the Scion Overmind." The Zillion Matriarch's vast consciousness filled the chamber as Coleman stepped inside. What he learned in that fateful encounter shook him to his core. "Archon Talonvar orchestrates this conflict," the Overmind's multitude of voices intoned. Both sides danced to the Vrisoth tune. Worse still was the revelation of treachery within humanity's own ranks. A cabal within Earth's military-industrial complex, conspiring with the enemy for a taste of power in the new galactic order. As Coleman emerged from the meeting, his mind raced. He had to expose the truth, neutralize the traitors, and somehow break the cycle of escalating destruction. But with his most trusted allies like Graves succumbing to the madness of war, he realized the price of victory might be his very humanity itself. The Jovian Thunder's engines flared to life as Coleman set course for Earth. The final confrontation loomed, and the fate of galaxies hung in the balance. Coleman's shuttle docked with the Jovian Thunder, his pupils dilating from the Scion Overmind's revelations. As he strode onto the bridge, the weight of betrayal settled heavily upon his shoulders. "Admiral Graves, assemble our most trusted Venators," he ordered, his voice tight. "We have traitors in our midst." Graves' eyes narrowed, a feral gleam replacing her usual calculated gaze. "Who?" "CEO Maverick Caney of Avalon Aerospace, for starters. But there are more. We move now." Within hours, coalition forces surrounded Avalon's corporate enclave. Caney's private army met them with a hail of plasma fire, turning the pristine corridors into a war zone. Coleman ducked behind a twisted bulkhead, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils. "Push forward!" he shouted over the din of battle. "We cannot let Caney escape." Graves moved like a force of nature, her cybernetic enhancements allowing her to dance through enemy fire. She tore through Avalon's defenses with ruthless efficiency, leaving a trail of broken bodies in her wake. They cornered Caney in his opulent office, the man's carefully manicured facade crumbling as he faced his captors. Coleman leveled his weapon at the industrialist's chest. "Talk," he growled. "Who else is working with the Vrisoth?" Caney's lips curled into a sneer. "You have no idea how deep this goes, Coleman. Generals, cabinet members, we've all seen the truth. Humanity's destiny lies at the feet of our new masters." Graves snarled, her augmented fist lashing out. There was a sickening crunch as it connected with Caney's skull, silencing him forever. Coleman turned away, his comm unit already active. "This is only the beginning. We root out every last one of them." What followed was a grueling campaign of internal purges. Each new revelation struck at Coleman's core, eroding what little faith he had left in humanity's inherent goodness. The final blow came when irrefutable evidence surfaced of a rebel general conducting horrific experiments on civilians using Rin bioweapons. Coleman stared at the footage, his expression hardening into a mask of cold fury. "No more half measures," he declared to his inner circle. "From this moment forward, we do whatever it takes to ensure humanity's survival. Whatever it takes." Across liberated human worlds, orbital bombardments rained fire upon suspected Vrisoth strongholds. Voices of moderation were silenced, their pleas for restraint falling on deaf ears. As Galactic Council reinforcements attempted to extract their forces, Coleman unleashed his most terrifying weapon yet. The Corvin swarm descended upon the enemy armada, a tide of ever-replicating hunter-killer drones that turned space itself into a killing field. Coleman watched from the Jovian Thunder's bridge as the slaughter unfolded. Gortak's once mighty fleet disintegrated before his eyes, reduced to little more than cosmic debris. "Sir," a young officer called out, his voice trembling, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're suing for peace." A hush fell over the bridge as all eyes turned to Coleman. He stood motionless for a long moment, the weight of countless lives hanging in the balance. "Open a channel," he said at last. "It's time to dictate our terms."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.